Bill Schwartz is an attorney in Charleston, and he joins us in studio this morning. We are properly socially distanced, but you're in the studio. Bill, good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on again, Hoppy.
Thanks for coming on. So I start with everybody. I know you a little bit, but tell the state, who are you and why are you running?
I'm Bill Schwartz. I'm an attorney in Charleston, West Virginia. I've been so for 32 years, representing workers and families, small businesses throughout the state of West Virginia. I am a graduate of St. John's University, where we discussed last time I was a two-time Big East medalist, Student Athlete of the Year. Took that scholarship money to Washington Lee University, where I didn't just receive a Juris Doctor degree, but I was justice on the moot court board there, meaning I was one of the top student advocates at Washington Lee School of Law, and I was also regional champion of the national trial competition, which was in Dallas. Did not win the national trial competition, but I did win the regional competition.
Why do you want to be on the court?
I want to be on the court. We discussed this last time. I originally got into this. It's my second time, and it was a very abbreviated campaign the last time. And I got into it because I was upset as a taxpayer and a lawyer with the abuse of taxpayer money. Of course, the $32,000 couch, $3 million in renovations, living as kings on taxpayer dollars. It upset me. It upset other people, and I decided to do something about it, and I ran. I'm back again because I was also upset with the process of the impeachment of all justices, and then the appointment process. And I was recommended by a panel to be appointed. Two others were appointed. I had some concerns for constitutional issues, and if you recall, I actually brought a lawsuit against the governor at that time. And I felt that was justified. The Supreme Court didn't agree with me, but I felt I needed to do it. I didn't think my job was done as far as helping focus on what I thought that my concerns were with the court. I also had concerns with out-of-state money during the election process. Millions of dollars coming in from organizations, whatever they call themselves, fairness or whatever, money coming in from somewhere, and it seemed like a coordinated effort on behalf of certain candidates and put them on the court. I'm not criticizing any justice who's on the court right now. Obviously, I criticize some actions that occurred before. But it was the process, and that's why I'm back. Okay,
Bill Schwartz is with his candidate in Division 3, which is for that 4-year term. Bill, I have a couple standard questions, but I want to pick out a couple of things you just said. Everybody was appalled by the financial scandal on the court. Okay,
right.
However, the court has cleaned up a lot of that. They've put in place a lot more strict rules and regulations about how money is spent. The legislature has purview over the Supreme Court's budget. So, haven't a lot of those things been cleared up?
I hope so. I hope so, and I'm. Look, at some point, there's been some good changes that occurred. Used to be the Supreme Court could write its own check.
Sure.
They didn't have to go to the legislature.
That's changed. That's
what I'm saying. That's one of the changes I think is a good thing. I also think I've heard about some of the reforms, but I also believe in trust but verify. I believe maybe a little more legislative oversight. Maybe panels looking at the court. Transparency is key right now. And one of my concerns is not just that, but the election process itself. I'm in a division where the justice was appointed and not elected. I'm providing an option, and I think I want to be a taxpayer, a watchdog, because I'm not a politician. Never been a judge. I do believe this. I believe that, and we know this from proof in the past, that maybe if you spend 30 or 40 years wearing the robes and people calling your honor on the taxpayer dollar, you lose perspective, and you may abuse that.
You know what they say? I mean, anybody who's been a circuit judge, every time they've come on this show says, I've been a judge. I've been there. I've already adjudicated. I've heard all sides. That qualifies me. You disagree with that?
I disagree with that. I also get a kick out of when a judge says they're not a politician.
Well, if you're running for office, you're a politician. I don't care who you are.
I mean, right now, I guess I'm turning into a politician. But for 30 years of my career, if you spend 30 years as a judge, especially before it was nonpartisan, you're a politician. You run for office. And if you get appointed within a system and like the leader of one party is there helping the governor appoint, it's a political action. So you're a politician.
On the appointment, and you did challenge the appointments.
I did.
Right?
I did.
And
I respect that I lost, and they're justices. I'm not criticizing what they've done since they've been on the court.
But that is the process. I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. You're a lawyer. And you define the case. But I mean, that is the process. Is the governor appoints to fill a vacancy.
I felt I had a right to bring it, and I respect the court's decision against me. And I'm not speaking critical of any justice right now taking action on the court. My reason for running again is the process. I'm giving the voters a choice. They can choose the same old, which is lifetime judges and politicians, or they could choose a taxpayer among the ropes, which is what I want to be.
Bill Schwartz is with us. He's a candidate for the West Virginia Supreme Court in Division 3, and this is the 4-year, the unexpired term. This was Loffrey's term. John Hutchison was appointed to that position by the governor. Laura Dyer is also running, as is Bill Schwartz. So, are the West Virginia and U.S. constitutions, do they mean what the four corners of the documents mean, or are they living documents given to interpretation by judges?
You've talked about 2 documents. I'm going to break them up because I get these questions all the time.
Okay.
And I've done a little bit of teaching at college level for constitutional law. The U.S. Constitution says what it says. Let's start with that. But I also believe the U.S. Constitution, any 2 people can look at black letter law and maybe have different interpretations. But my opinion, and I said this years ago, my opinion of what the U.S. Constitution says is it says what the United States Supreme Court says it says. If I sat on the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals, that's a promotion. I consider that an honor. But I do not have power over the United States Supreme Court. Whatever the United States Supreme Court tells me regarding the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or any other controversial issue, any key issue, I'm not up there to try to overrule the United States Supreme Court. I'm going to defer to what the United States Supreme Court says. If the United States Supreme Court says this on a Second Amendment issue, I'm going to enforce what they say it is. That's how I can.
Okay, what about the West Virginia Constitution?
The West Virginia Constitution, I believe it says what. I'm not on the Supreme Court to try to legislate. If someone wants to elect me or anyone else to come to a particular decision that they like, that's not justice. That's just getting what you want. I mean, I raised 2 boys. I raised 2 sons. And I always hear, that's not fair. You got to be fair. And what you got to do is apply what the Constitution says. If you don't like it, you can change that, amend it. But I have to live with what the state constitution says it says. And I do believe in the open courts provision. And if the legislature drafts a law that is valid under our Constitution, it's not my job to overturn it. I'm not running for the legislature. I'm running to be exactly what I said, a watchdog for fairness and for the taxpayer dollar.
Speaking of which, and Bill Schwartz is with us, candidate for Division 3 in the West Virginia Supreme Court, and that kind of does bring up the separation of powers issue. And during the impeachment, the West Virginia Supreme Court made a ruling. They were appointed members of the court at that time, Bill, but they made a ruling, and it challenging the impeachment process and challenging the procedure used by the House. Yeah. Was that an overreach by the West Virginia Supreme Court in the legislative branch, or was the court carrying out its functions, its proper function?
I'll answer it this way. I believe both the legislature. Hear me out. Hear me out on this. Hear me out on this.
Okay.
I believe both the legislature and the court felt they were carrying out their constitutional functions. I watched it. I was one of my sons was considering Fairfield University. I was looking at it up in Connecticut. They knew about this issue. We were in constitutional crisis. We had a legislature that may or may not do what the Supreme Court said it was going to do. That's the definition of constitutional crisis. We were on the edge there. I think we've stepped back from the ledge. I'm grateful for that, but that's always a risk. When you impeach an entire court, you show your power to control that court. When you impeach every justice, I don't think that's ever happened in the country. When you impeach every justice on the Supreme Court and then replace it, each of the justices, or begin the process of replacing it, you show your power as a legislative.
So who was right? Because the Supreme Court said that this is a judicial matter and the legislature can't come in and do that.
I believe the legislature has the power to impeach.
Okay.
Period. I believe the legislature has the power to impeach. Whether I agree with with sweeping impeachment isn't my job if I'm on the court. My job is if I was on a legislature, I may agree, I may vote with them, I may vote with 3 or 2 of them and say you shouldn't be touching the entire court. You should take 2 or 3 off. Mm-hmm. But as a court, I think you got to defer to the legislature. It's their power to do it. They have the power to do it.
Yet the court also has the authority to rule on constitutionality of laws that are passed by the legislature.
And that became an issue of potential constitutional crisis because the legislature was indicating they may not follow what the court told them to do. They don't have the power of the sword. It's only if you respect their decision. And the legislature, I was curious to see what would happen there. I feel good that apparently everybody stepped back from the ledge.
Right.
And we didn't get there.
Yeah. Bill Schwartz is with us, candidate for West Virginia Supreme Court Division 3. There are 3 people in that race. John Hutchison, who's on the court now, appointed by the governor, Bill Schwartz, and also Laura Dyer. You seem pretty open, so I'm not even sure I need to preface this, but the U.S. Supreme Court has said in a Minnesota case that candidates for judicial seats can, in fact, can comment on things much more than they have been inclined to historically, because sometimes candidates will say, well, that may come before the court, or that did come before the court. Recently, the most significant decision by the Supreme Court, in my opinion, was a decision that upheld the right-to-work law in West Virginia. I'm not sure if you've read the decision.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
I'm familiar.
Do you think the court did the right thing or the wrong thing?
Specifically in my division, I know that Justice Hutchinson had a lot of fallout. And if people feel they need to vote for me because of what he ruled there,
he upheld it with a dissent, but he voted to uphold the law with a dissent.
He concurred.
Okay.
He concurred, saying he likes unions. They're important. But he ruled against them.
Yes.
And it upset them, and they withdrew.
Their support.
Their endorsement. Now, obviously,
are they supporting you?
We both. Some are.
Okay.
The insulators. I've represented the insulator unions for 3 decades. They know me. They were going to endorse me anyway. And so but on both sides, I also have the Blue Ridge Patriots and Eastern Pan Conservative, and both sides endorse me. But yes, some labor has come to me. But if you're going to vote for me because of what Justice Hutchinson did, I think he followed his conscience. I think there was clearly a legal basis for him coming to the ruling he did. I think there were decent arguments on both sides. I think there was a decent argument for the union saying it's a taking from us. We don't like the fact that we have to represent people who aren't chipping in.
Sure.
And so I get that, but I also get Justice Hutchinson's position. I can't find authority that's found against this. So I got to go this way. So I'm not criticizing Justice Hutchinson for making a tough call for him personally because of endorsements that he has on both sides.
Would you have ruled that way?
I have, if I was a legislator, I would vote against right to work.
Okay, all right.
I would vote against. I spent 30 years. We both have backgrounds. So Justice Hutchinson has an insurance background. I've got a trial lawyer background, representing labor, representing workers. Yeah. I want.
Yeah. So
workers,
you have a philosophical opposition to right to work. Okay, that's fine.
But I don't criticize him for ruling as he did. I don't think it's a baseless decision that he made. I don't. I can't. I understand the majority ruling, and I respect it, and it's the law. And now the unions may come back with a different. It's permeating around the country, as you know, and the unions may come back with a different approach sometime in the future, based on how they approach it and what the issue is at.
Yeah, it might change the argument.
It might change the argument, but the argument as it was this time.
Yeah,
I understand why Justice Hutchinson did what he did.
Bill Schwartz is a Charleston lawyer, and he's a candidate for West Virginia Supreme Court in Division 3. So you'll see on the ballot, Division 1, 2, 3. Division 3, there's 3 candidates. There's Bill Schwartz, there's Laura Dyer, there's John Hutchison, and this is for the unexpired 4-year term.
That's correct.
All right. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me on.